CBS News correspondent David Begnaud is with us near the border. He's Skyping with us. So, David, you were one of the few correspondents to be able to go inside one of those detention centers in McAllen, Texas. How does the video that was just released compare to what you saw when you were in that detention center?
So here's what's interesting, and this is really important. A lot of people, Laura Ingraham at Fox News caught hell and high water for saying that it was something like a summer camp, right? Let me tell you the difference and what she may have meant. The processing facility in McAllen that we have been standing in front of for the last 4 days, that's where you see the cages that are locked, right? That's where people who cross the border illegally are initially taken and processed. They can only be there for 72 hours. After that, they're then turned over to the Department of Health and Human Services, which can send children to facilities around the country. And that's where the facilities look more like summer camps, as Laura Ingraham was talking about. I mean, I'm not suggesting they're summer camps. I'm just saying that might explain why she used that terminology, because from what we're seeing in those pictures, there are recreational activities, there are bunk beds, there appears to be schooling, that type of stuff. But the bottom line is we cannot tell you for sure because the government will not give us access. They are only providing this handout video and still photos that we are showing to you. But I want to give you that context. They refuse to allow us inside to document for ourselves.
And that's the point, David, that I was going to ask you to talk a little bit more about, which is everybody who's watching your reporting that is being done by other networks, other news organizations, should be aware that this is sort of a dog and pony show. This is what you and I and other reporters have experienced in other countries where press freedom does not exist, where we are taken to something that the government wants us to see and they want us to write about and they want us to report about it, and they don't give us the free access that is protected under the First Amendment of the Constitution. So what are you and other reporters doing to at least try to get the government to, we, for example, you saw that and heard that audio from ProPublica that somebody passed along to a reporter. Are we at that level right now where we have to wait for people to sort of leak what's happening in some of these detention centers?
Perhaps, but let me say this. What some journalists are doing is choosing not to show the images, sort of taking a stand and saying, until you let me in, I'm not going to show you. I'm not saying they're wrong. What I'm saying is that we're showing it, but we're providing every bit of context along the way. I'm not here to necessarily criticize anyone. I just want to be adamant about what we're getting. When we went to that process facility, they let us inside, but they only gave us 10 minutes. So we wrote down as much as we could, and then they gave us handout video. 1 minute and 34 seconds of video that they wanted you to see. Now, here's their excuse. There are privacy concerns. We can't show faces. And it is true. When they give that video, you see that cage right there? They're thinking, OK, you can't see the children's faces. And here's why. They allege that if we allow you to show faces, they can be used to the advantage of smugglers, right? Smuggling is a huge part of why people come here. I interviewed a father yesterday who came with his 2-year-old son from Honduras. You just saw him in that story. And I asked him, did you use a smuggler? And he said, yes. How else would they know to get from Honduras to the Rio Grande Valley area of South Texas unless someone took them and said, let me send you? That video right there, the faces are blurred. So that's why the government's saying you're not getting the access you want. But at the end of the day, we want to be in there. We want to see it for ourselves. I want to walk out and be able to show you what the government gave us is exactly what we saw inside. As of today, I can't tell you that. I can only tell you that's the video they're giving us that they want you to see.
And part of the reason that it's so important is because despite the executive order that the president signed, there are 2,300 children that have already been separated from their parents. And at this point, David, do we have any idea when or how they will be reunited?
No. Listen, I talked to someone at the Department of Homeland Security yesterday, and I said, as soon as the president signs that bill, are you going to have information? And this person said, yes, call me. They have not answered the phone since 2 o'clock yesterday afternoon. Not an email, not a text message, not a voicemail, right? Now, that's not to say they're intentionally ignoring us. I think it's more to say that they don't even know. I talked to a man who runs he's one of the lead officers at the Rio Grande Valley sector here, and he said, David, I'm still waiting to get a directive from Washington. And as soon as we get it, I can go tell my 3,000 agents how things are going to change. In all fairness, there are a whole lot of people, even in Washington, who are waiting to find out exactly how things are going to change. Will those 2,300 children be reunited? or will they not? Does this executive order do anything for them? Or are we essentially saying, okay, those 2,300, you're just out there. Now we'll change the process going forward. There's still so much more reporting that needs to be done on this story.
And when you hear now that there are children that are being flown to other states, I don't know about you guys, but when I was, 7 or 8, I got separated from my parents at a mall for about a half an hour. And I will never forget the feeling of despair that I had as a young child, not knowing where my parents were, surrounded by people I didn't know, was not familiar with the area that I was in. And when I found them again, I remember the joy that I experienced. I cannot imagine a child being separated from their families and then being flown to another state. I mean, what's happening to those individuals, David?
Well, listen, there's some reporting out of Michigan, Vlad, where children as young as 12 months old are arriving between 12 and 5 a.m. in the middle of the night.
Wow.
They're being taken off of a plane and sent to a facility. I mean, the mayor of New York City, Bill de Blasio, talks about that 9-month-old child, right, who's arriving. And, I think it was Gayle King on CBS this morning who said this, and I hadn't thought of it like this. Or maybe it was Nora who said, how do we know they're even going to remember the face of their parents, right? They're so young, right? How long will they be without them? I mean, listen, I can't tell you, this story is getting so much attention on social media from people who are reaching out to us and saying, where can I go to help? How can I donate? Can I volunteer at a facility? People are so desperate. Everyone connects with this story. Not saying, listen, political views aside, everybody can connect with the idea that a child has been separated from a mother and a father. And I'll wrap up with this. That man from Honduras who came here with his 2-year-old son, the 2-year-old boy kept hugging his daddy's neck and he'd kiss him and do that. And I asked him, I said, did you know that there was a chance you'd be separated? And he said, when we got here, I heard about that. And he started to tear up and he wiped away his tears and he said, I just was so worried in that 72 hours that they might take Jeremy away from me. But he said they didn't. And sure enough, they had a bus ticket. They were on their way to Boston to meet a grandpa. And he told the immigration officers that he'd show up in court for his court date.
David Begnaud, thank you so much for your reporting, David. We appreciate it as always.
You bet.